behalf of Center for Policy Dialogue, I would like to welcome you to this innovative ideas and knowledge sharing consultation. And thank you very much for being with us throughout this morning and afternoon. So, this is the last session, which is on employment creation through technology in South and Southeast Asia. So this is also another very important issue because employment generation is a challenge because no matter how developed the economy is, achieving a full employment scenario is very difficult, and particularly in countries which are developing and least developed, employment generation is all the more challenging. In fact, in Bangladesh, the recent uprising, which was led by the student, started with this very problem of employment generation because the economy was not able to generate enough employment for the youth. Every year, over 2 million people were, entering the job market, but there was not enough job, and the only job was in the public sector. Mostly private sector was not being able to generate that many jobs, and then within that limited jobs in the public sector, a large part was kept as quotas for various sections of people. I mean, in fact, 56% of the jobs were kept as quotas for various sectors. So, which was, first the availability and then the distributional justice. So these were two main problems with the job. Particularly for the youth population. I mean, if you look at the average unemployment rate, that is not high. I'm talking about the Bangladesh scenario. That's about 3.5%. But for the youth, it is much, much higher. Unemployment rate for the youth, according to the official statistics, it's 8%. But the problem is that something called NEET, not in employment, education, and training, that NEET population is very high. The youth aged between 15 and 24 years old, the NEET population among this cohort is about 40%, which is very, very disturbing scenario because they are nowhere. They're basically floating, people. So by this number, I mean, with this population outside the employment or outside the economy was being also deprived of their own, of the youth population's services. Not only that, they were not being able to contribute or generate income for themselves, but they were not also being able to contribute to the economy. Economy was being deprived of benefiting from their talent and productivity. So I think many countries in the South Asia region also have similar trend, maybe a little different, but this is the trend. In fact, globally also, need population is very high, over 20%. So this is a global phenomena as well. But on the other hand, we are also seeing the rise of the technology. So the AI, robotics, and all these are taking over many jobs. But on the other hand, there are also opportunities. So, but in many countries like ours, least developed countries, they are not being able to take advantage of those new job opportunities as well. So there is a need for policies which will lead to training, adequate training, and skills development, so that the youth can take advantage of those opportunities. So this is a pro, this is a whole complex scenario, in fact, and this is also related to the um, quality of education, because in many countries what happens that there is a large demand for um, good skilled population. On the one hand, there is unemployment, but many the private sector companies look for skilled population, and the people who apply for the jobs, the youth, they're not cut out for those jobs. So there is a gap, skill mismatch also. So the lack of investment in good quality education, that's also a problem in many parts of the world, including South Asia and maybe in Southeast Asia as well. So investment is a problem right now. When we are about talking about this, just a couple of minutes back, one of my friends sent um, something which is maybe relevant. He sent a quote of Elon Musk, which is the richest person of the in the world. He said that it is easier to land a man on Mars than to change the school system. So this is, yeah, so the system of education is also very important to change the employment scenario, employment landscape, and also the issue of that whether everyone should go to the job market. That's not possible. I mean, at least for many smaller economies, the economy does not have the capacity to absorb that many people. So there is a need for um, you know creating entrepreneurship. So for that also you need skills, and you need access to finance as well. So this is, as I said, this is a multidimensional issue. So we will discuss that how the South and Southeast Asian region can generate more employment for the youth population who have huge potential. So I have an excellent panel here, but as in case of the previous two sessions, that we also have people who are experts there, and we will share our knowledge. So I'll introduce my panels here. On my right, Dr. Ganga Tilak Ratna, who is a research fellow and head of poverty and social welfare policy research at the Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka, IPS. And then Mr. Aris Setiadi, who is the Executive Director, Indonesia FinTech Association, Indonesia. Yes. And Mr. Vivek Rana, Principal Consultant, GRCP, ICT, MIS Consultant, Asian Development Bank, Nepal. Mr. Prajol Joshi, Economist, South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment, Southie, Nepal, and Mr. Pranav Gupta, Research Associate, Just Jobs Network, India. So thank you once again for joining this session. I would first call upon Dr. Ganga Tilakratna to make her points.
Been able to actually be in here in the morning because I was not feeling that well. So good afternoon to all of you. I mean, as it was mentioned by Dr. Famida too, digital skills have been increasingly important for the employability of youth in the modern landscape, and improving digital skills is considered very important to address the skills mismatch in the labor markets, as well as to reduce unemployment, very high levels of unemployment that we see in the countries across the region, and which is the same case for Sri Lanka, where the youth unemployment actually has been around 20%, which is actually much higher compared to Bangladesh. And it's actually even higher for females. Young females unemployment has been around 28% in recent times. Increasingly, we see that the employers across several sectors, not just in the ICT sector, but also in the banking and finance, insurance and trade, and marketing and retail, etc., looking for candidates who are not just having knowledge in the subject, the traditional subject areas, but also who are up to date in digital skills. and are able to utilize digital tools to effectively solve problems. And especially since the global pandemic, the employment landscape has changed, so digital skills have become even more important with the increasing use of remote work culture in many industries. And also, digitalization has led to new ways of employment for youth, such as internet based virtual work and on demand work through various platforms. And globally, also, various such platforms have emerged. For instance, Upwork platform and Fiverr providing opportunities for youth to access global markets for freelance work and various other trade in goods, and for various creative and technical services as well. So, in addition, we also know that digital skills can help boost entrepreneurship among youth. And in recent times, we have seen actually across the region and in Sri Lanka too, that there has been an increasing number of online businesses or e-commerce activities led by youth, and many SMEs led by youth in several sectors in Sri Lanka in recent times, especially in retail and food sectors, have tried to kind of shift to e-commerce or online delivery models in order to access new markets and also to upscale the operations through various online platforms, for instance, through Daras and Uber Eats and PicMe. There are several such platforms, and these models also have created other new job opportunities, particularly for youth or new entrants to the labor market, especially in the areas of low skills ones like delivery services and transportation, etc. So basically, given the importance of improving digital skills in creating employment opportunities for youth, it is also, I think, it's very important to integrate digital literacy and ICT education in the educational system from the primary levels. So this would require updating a curriculum to include ICT education in primary as well as secondary levels, as well as it will require various other measures to train teachers, basically implement teacher training programs in ICT, and also improve access to infrastructure, including computers and other digital tools and internet connectivity, etc. So we also know that promoting digital entrepreneurship among youth also requires addressing several challenges or barriers they face, in particular access to finance, like Dr. Famida mentioned, and also education barriers and infrastructure barriers too. So one of the key challenges faced by young digital entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka is also access to financing. So much needs to be done by the government. So government can introduce targeted financial incentives such as grants, low interest rate loans, and also tax breaks for startups. And also to address educational barriers, just like I mentioned earlier, it is very important actually to integrate entrepreneurship and digital literacy into the national education curriculum. And also implement ICT training programs for teachers. Um, Also to address the infrastructure barriers, so government can prioritize expansion of broadband connectivity, especially in rural and underserved areas, and also to establish public Wi-Fi zones in educational institutions. And also private institutions can also play an important role by partnering with the government to create digital hubs and innovation centers where young entrepreneurs could collaborate, learn, and grow their businesses. So, with these initial thoughts, maybe I'll stop.
Thank you very much, Ganga, for these valuable points, actually. So, you have touched upon a lot of issues which are very common to the context of Bangladesh as well. So, I'm sure for the others speakers will also echo some of the points you have raised. Now, I would like to request Mr. Aris Setiadi, who is the Executive Director, Indonesia FinTech Associations Indonesia. So, Mr. Setiadi, so my special, apart from your, thoughts, my special uh, request would be that, what are the best practices you have in case of Indonesia or in other countries which can help generating youth employment, because you are in the fintech the sector, and this is a booming area and we are yet to take advantage of that. So over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Fahmida, for the introductions. I will probably perhaps step back a bit to see the larger area in the Southeast Asia to provide sort of a context. Southeast Asia is a large country with more than 600 millions of populations, and almost half of them are in Indonesia. And the tech sector or digital economy has been really flourishing, especially uh, we have to say this, but it's a blessing in disguise due to the COVID-19. And uh, recently, for the last couple of years, the digital economy has been growing 15% or double digit per year. And to compare, the overall GDP in Southeast Asia grow on average 5.2%. So it's triple the numbers. And pretty much the same in Indonesia. Within the last decade, Indonesia has been growing only 5%. So digital economy, while in terms of the scope is still very limited, in Indonesia it's around 8%. But when it comes to the growth, it's accelerating very fast. So it creates such a potentials for the youth in Indonesia in particular in two areas. First, as a digital talents, and second, as the startup founders, because there are a lot of incentives that are provided by the government of Indonesia. There are scholarships, both domestic and also overseas, including in tech sector. And then the Ministry of Education Indonesia creates such a program called Freedom Curricula, where a student can customize their study and the opportunity to spend some semesters in the private companies. So they aim to learn more in a practical side rather than theoretical sides. And then the Ministry of Education, the higher education, also provided a program called guest lecturers from the practitioners. So inviting professionals from various sectors, including tech, to teach at the university level. And in tech, and also fintech in particular, various government agency conducted hackathons from Ministry of Communication and Digital, which is the one that in charge in the technology Indonesia, but also in some other ministries like Ministry of Educations, even in the financial technology, the central bank or Bank Indonesia, and also the Indonesia Financial Service Authority, the FSA, also conducted such programs inviting innovations in technological innovation in the financial sectors. And then there are also a couple of programs to improve or to increase the startups numbers in Indonesia. The government aims to have 1,000 startups per year, and they built the innovation hub in several provinces in Indonesia. So to put that also in the context that Indonesia is an archipelago, so sometimes it's quite difficult to be centered in one city. So the government built in a couple of cities in Indonesia. Perhaps one thing that has been really helpful in boost the technological innovations when it comes to the absorption of the digital talents, and also incentivize youth to become startup founders. Answering Dr. Fahmida's question is on the regulatory sandbox in Indonesia. So the regulatory sandbox is also in various ministries and agencies. There are one in the Ministry of Digital and Communication and Digital, and also there is one in the Indonesia Financial Service Authority, which happens to be my association as the self-regulatory organization, helping the onboarding for those fintech that register to the regulatory sandbox. And they're also in the Ministry of, in the Central Bank of Indonesia for fintech related to the payment system. And there is another one in the Ministry of Health for, actually it's related to the previous discussions earlier this morning on the telemedicines as well as on the insurtech. So that helps in improving the absorption of the employment and also the startups in Indonesia. However, there are of course a lot of challenges as well. First, the multiple stakeholders that in one side helps in absorbing this employment. On the other hand, it creates such an unorchestrated effort of the government. So because it, to be frank, in Indonesia is less coordinated. Uh, Last year, the Indonesia government enacted an omnibus law in the financial sector, and it's for the first time they regulate fintech at the highest level of the regulation. So it's usually under each ministries or each agencies. Now they mandated, they call it a cross or joint regulatory sandbox, which it hasn't been into fruitful stage, but we have the hope that it will happen sometime soon. So there will be more coordination between the agencies. And then the challenges is, I think, echoing what uh, Dr. Fahmida mentioned and also Dr. Ganga mentioned previously, is on the skill gaps or mismatch. At AFTEC, in my association, we conducted annual member survey to our 300 fintech companies in Indonesia. And within the last three periods of survey, or within the last 4 years, the cybersecurity, data analytics, and risk management has always been the top three of the skill gaps. Despite when we spoke to the Ministry of Higher Education, there are a lot of IT graduates in Indonesia. But when it comes to the professional setting, the company still sees that there is a need to improve their skills. So most of our members in the fintech industry end up creating a in-house training or sending the employees to train to training centers. For instance, for the cybersecurity, there's a training center called ISAKA. I think it's an international to get their employees certified. Um, but this lack of uh, or the skill gaps also create such a salary bubble in the tech companies in Indonesia, because once they get trained by one company, they will be hijacked by another company rather than stay in the company. So it creates such a problem, because then the industry is less sustainable in a way, because only new company gets the best talent. So that's the challenges that we have in Indonesia. And of course, when the company retrain the employees, also a huge cost for them, and retaining them to not move to the other companies also another cost, because they didn't have to increase when the employee has such a bargaining power when they get additional training. And then artificial intelligence is a double sword. We are in between. At one side, I think there's a lot of opportunity for the tech savvy young populations in Indonesia to involve in AI as well as in generative AI, but it doesn't uh, also remove the fact that AI or generative AI has also affected the workforce in Indonesia, especially in tech. For instance, in one of our member, last year or 2 years ago, when this company improved the fraud identification, they hire around 200 tech workers, and they create an AI and train them, and now the system is there, and so they need only 20 tech engineers. So they let off another 180 of the workers. So it I think at some point we have to also see the or to predict or project on how we could retrain, upskill these tech workers to also fit to the employment that exists after this AI and also generative AI development. And perhaps last point, I want to touch a bit about the gender because we previously has a discussion on that as well. In Indonesia, in particular, in the tech sector or in fintech, the employment in fintech industry, when it comes to the share proportion of female tech workers, still quite minimum. Only 70, there are 70% of our members only have 25% proportion of their employment female in the tech sectors. Sorry, in the tech divisions. And when it comes to the women leadership in the fintech, currently there are only 26% of our members who has a female in the C level, even though when it compared to the previous survey, it doubles the numbers. Previously, only 13% of the fintech companies in Indonesia that become our members who has female in the leadership level. I think that's perhaps the initial points that I want to share in terms of the employment creations and also startups development in Indonesia related to the fintech industry, and more than happy to take any question later on in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aris Sityadeep. Very important points you have raised. What Ganga has mentioned earlier, you have taken it forward. Some of the important issues actually you have touched upon. For example, access to technology is very important. You have just mentioned that how the more skilled workers are being hired by other companies at a higher price. But on the other hand, those who do not have access to technology, they will not be getting the opportunity. So, which means that this is also a tool of creating inequality unless you have, distribution, enough, distributional justice to that. And in order to do that, technological education is very important. And in this respect, your point regarding female participation in the tech, in the fintech sector is quite notable in the sense that you have highlighted that the participation of female workers in the fintech sector, technology sector, is lower compared to male colleagues actually, and at the CU level it is even lower. So this also reflects the overall landscape of differences between men and female employment, which Ganga also mentioned that the need population and unemployment rate is higher among women. And in case of Bangladesh also, I mean, we feel that female participation in STEM education is much, much less. That's why they also are behind in terms of getting jobs in the higher paid jobs. Thank you very much for those points. And now I would turn to Mr. Vivek Rana, Principal Consultant, GRCP, ICT, MIS Consultant, ADB, Nepal.
Thank you.
Yeah, your
Thank you, Dr. Khaton. Well, I'm going to be speaking a little bit about Nepal and then drawing your attention to how the development efforts in Nepal has worked. What are the bottlenecks? Where are real challenges coming from? Both in terms of employment as well as the workforce, the digital workforce, what we call them. You see, Nepal, if you look at Nepal 5 years or 6 years down the line, Nepal has made remarkable progress. It's really remarkable. Now, if you compare Nepal with countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, and even Maldives, that's when our rating goes down. As a country, we have progressed, but if you try to compare ourselves with even similar economies that are coming from Africa, Our progress has basically been stagnant, but not at the same rate as what other countries have done. Now, in the digital front, uh, there has been a lot of resources that has been spent by the government, and including the financial institutions, to make citizens digitally literate. Literacy is one part. The second part is being digitally aware. That's the missing part. And spend a lot of time in education, but then they lack certain skills, even on the user side, the usability side, to remain digitally secure. And there are other nuances that are coming up when they're talking about things like digital trust, which is very, very important when you talk about the ecosystem of digital trust. Now, we have around 29, 30 digital wallets in Nepal, 30 digital wallets. We used to have around 29 financial institutions in Nepal, pretty much in the same lines what Bangladesh was some time back. Then the country came up with certain amendments saying that, hey, this is a lot of banks in a very small country. There was very, competition was not very well. It was not very good. So they decided to forcefully merge some of the banks. They provided an option, but the banks merged. Now we have around 19 banks compared to 29 some time back. But again, you take the same situation with the fintech companies, with the digital companies that are providing employability to younger generation, and they are very attractive in a sense that it's quite a lucrative job working for a digital company. 29 digital wallets, only 4 or 5 of them are working. They are working. A lot of them have even graduated to a stage when they are whitelisting their products and selling it abroad, which is quite an achievement for a Nepali company. But if you look at the workforce, how people are moving into those jobs, uh, basically into jobs such as programmers, UI developers, product developers, system integrators, the security part. They have not been able to graduate to a much higher level. So there is a kind of frustration coming out because the market is not growing. You see, the market is not growing because a lot of the digital products that are being offered are mostly for people that are very literate, number one, and for people that are basically in towns, even though they can access it from a village. But even with the coverage ratio with the telecom, sometimes in the eastern part, the mountainous region, and the western part, connectivity is still a challenge. So even though it can be accessed anywhere, you should, as an example, take that is Nepali digital products works very well in Nepal, but as soon as you step outside Nepal, then you start having problems because it's all locally hosted. The government doesn't have a priority to host it on the cloud. So when you come into these issues, there is very little user experience. Digital is all about experience. It's about the journey a person takes moving from one part to the other part. So because of the digital systems not being hosted on cloud, the experience has not been very good. And on the other side, it has been very expensive for the developing companies, the fintech companies, because of the expensive hardware they have to procure, because everything has to be in Nepal, only because of the sovereignty issue, all the data has to reside in Nepal. So that is another challenge the country faces. The third part is a lot of the fintechs that came and started operating in Nepal, the Nepalese-born fintech, they started building their own network. So they have their own private network. So it's pretty much progressing in terms of what we call a vendor lock-in. So one vendor would only work with his certain product, push his product to the market, and rely on all the customers using his product only. As soon as there is an interoperability, they don't route it through their routing path, but they route it through their own network. So what that has created is some of the players being very powerful, and other players having a very difficult time surviving in the market. It's not creating an equal level playing field for all the fintech companies. Now we're having talks. Nepal is also having talks with bigger development partners to develop what is called a digital public infrastructure, what India has, and what your prime minister keeps talking about most of the time. And he's done a very good job at it. Digital public infrastructure with the entire linking with Aadhaar and providing those services to the rural people, developing an open knowledge center, open e-commerce center, when any participant can participate. That, I think, is the right model to go, you know, because you're creating an equal level playing field for every supplier or a vendor to choose not only the product, but also the delivery service that he or she wants, you know. So that's the second part. We have initiated dialogues. There are a lot of other nations as well that are competing in this area. I'm sure that your countries, Pakistan as well as Bangladesh, and the other countries are also looking into this model of digital public infrastructure. Now, having said all these things, where does Nepal stand into the digital areas? How has it created jobs? Most of the concentration are happening in bigger cities, you know, not in rural areas. The offices are very much hierarchical set in the capital. The rollout of people who are seeking jobs or have to travel all the way to Nepal to get a job in these kind of private sector companies. And the government has been very slow in adopting new policies to enable this at rural places, and also providing certain subsidies and certain incentive for people to use these services to bring the cost of operations down. So we still have to go a long ways in identifying these systems where the reach, even though it's there, and the affordability also comes in, for people to be able to use these services in remote parts of the country. That will be a time when the country will be actually getting the digital dividends that we have all talked about. So I think this is pretty much the case about Nepal, and there has been quite a bit of interaction in terms of digital and how it needs to move up with sector. The other part that I wanted to highlight coming from the businessmen is access to finance, which my colleague from Indonesia has said. It's very, very difficult for banks to provide money to IT company because they don't have a model. Their CPG, credit policy guideline, that every banks follow in terms of sending out loans does not structure the IT loan in any part. So most of the time it goes out as a term loan, which is very, very different in terms of running an IT company. Recently, there have been 4 or 5 venture capital firms that have started in Nepal that are slowly looking into financing IT companies in terms of second layer or third layer seed money to these companies. But again, these funds that they have received are very much tied up to the amount of cash flow the company receives, the amount of new businesses that the company can bring in. However, some companies have been successful at this because they have started offices in outshore places like in Dubai, like in Saudi Arabia, where they have been able to attract local venture capital firms coming from those countries. But again, the way these people venture capital works is, you all know, when they provide you a certain loan, they have to be able to track full utilization of those funds. And since the market is not growing, it has been a big challenge for those fintech companies as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you gave really a landscape of the fintech scenario in Nepal, and touched upon almost pretty much the same issues which we are dealing with right now. But I think some of the unique features have also been highlighted by you. The more prevalence of more IT companies and their functioning, and the issue of digital infrastructure, digital public infrastructure, and the issue of cyber security and hosting the uh, the data, I mean, in the cloud system. These are the issues I think we have to work on. So these are also relevant to many other countries. I would now request Mr. Pranav Gupta, a research associate, Just Jobs Network India. I think many have referred to Indian experiences of digital infrastructure, public infrastructure, which has been helping in terms of smooth service delivery, but also, I guess, in terms of creating more jobs as well. So, would you also share some of the reasons for the success, and also what needs to be done, and where are the bottlenecks? Thank you.
Yeah. Hi. So first of all, I would like to say thanks, and thanks to CPD, and also that it's an honor to be part of such an esteemed panel. Um, I would begin by saying that technology. I mean, I would reflect what Mr. Airy said, that AI, for example, is a double-edged sword. But I would broaden it and say that technology overall is a double-edged sword, and it has been for most part of human history. Whenever there's a technological revolution, there is a debate on job losses and job transitions. It and technology is also multifaceted. There are different types of technological breakthroughs that are happening today. There's AI, there's renewables, there's also digital technology and EVs. All of these are great enhancements, but there are a lot of disruptions that these technologies are causing, and the nature of these disruptions is very complex. There are a lot of backward and forward linkages with different sectors, um, uh, and with different technological and advancements. Take the example of EVs, for example. There are only three moving parts in an EV engine. Compare that to an ICE engine, there's almost 120 parts. So just try to imagine the number of job roles that are going to lose out because of this. There's a lot of disruption, therefore, that's happening. Um, Within the EVs sector, there's people like mechanics are going to lose out. Your roadside informal workforce, that's going to be affected. Also auto parts manufacturers, so these are not just OEMs, you're not just your original equipment manufacturers, but also people like side businesses, your auto parts manufacturers, who are going to lose out. And some estimates place that there's about one third job roles which might get either which are completely in danger or will need major reskilling. um, the second part, I think that second point I would like to make is that of course technology is very widely changing and very deeply changing the nature of work. But there's a very clear distinction that needs to be made, which is that there's a distinction between work and jobs, right? So what technology seems to be doing right now is creating a lot more work for the workforce. uh, there's And especially digital technology, like there's a lot of work creation, but not a lot of jobs that are being created, in the sense that jobs, I mean, you associate jobs with a bit more permanency, a little bit of job security. Whereas what's happening is that the work that's being created, the working conditions are a lot more precarious. um, think about your app-based aggregators. They act like employers essentially, and they get to set the terms and conditions for employment. Uh, and I mean, if you think about even informal sector workers, which are not part of your app-based employment, which are not in the app-based employment, the terms are completely non-negotiable, right? If you're a worker who is coming in as an Uber driver, you don't get to choose the terms and references. So these are some of the challenges that are there, that do exist, and that need to be fought. Uh, Also in terms of job security, like there's more job insecurity when you talk about technology. When you talk about technology, some of these app related enhancements, for example, again, let's take the example of an Uber driver, uh, or food delivery partners. As soon as your rating drops by even a few decimal points, uh, you can be sort of excluded from the workforce, from at least from that particular app. The good thing is that in a country like India or in other South Asian countries, there are a lot of these app-based services. So if you're like not part of one, you sort of end up being part of the other one. Um, and yeah, people have already pointed out the fact that regional, like sector wise, it's mostly in urban areas that these services are going to be part of. Like it does miss out on third tier cities as well as towns and rural areas. So yeah, I mean, the crux of the question is, how do we ensure that these tech disruptions don't cause displacement, widespread displacement, and they're actually uh, going to enhance the work market. I mean, there's growing awareness that there will be a need to rescale and transition to other emerging industries, and digital skills are of course important, but I think before that, what's important also is that there needs to be a solid base um, uh, of foundational skills that needs to be set up, and over that a digital landscape can be built. For example, foundational literacy and numeracy are not at the level that they should be in our part of the world. um, uh, Ma'am mentioned the neat figures, and also in my own country, in India, there's almost one fourth of teenagers on the age of 14 to 18 who are not able to read even a second grade text, right? And those kind of I mean, those patterns are repeated also in several South Asian countries. So the journey from education to employment is also important for us to consider. Almost one third of youth is not in employment, education, or training. And again, for women, it's even more. Almost half of the women are not part of the education, employment, or training group. And this cascades to digital skills further, right? Because again, like according to a GSMA report, there's 31% gender gap in mobile internet access in India. um, and so without addressing these disparities, reskilling also leaves behind those workers who need it the most, which is again women and other marginal groups. And it ends up reproducing the trends that already exist. So technological enhancements, like there's a very important need to first set up these systems and make them better. And of course technology can enhance the workforce, like from there. So and what will help is building a stronger foundation, like I said, of literacy, numeracy, and also critical skills, because those are the skills that help you quickly transition. Because right now the thing is that the kind of technological changes that are happening, they're very quick. They're a lot quicker than whatever we have seen previously in history, with AI, with other technological enhancements. So these skills need to be also, like, these are very important skills and very important needs. um, Also another important part is that a lot of skills are actually, they exist within the workforce. For example, there's a lot of familial skills that are passed on, especially in the informal sector. And so there's a need for standardization certificates for these. So you know who are your plumbers or other jobs, and you sort of, but you want to give them certificates, because that is not existent as of now. So standardization certificates, those are also quite important strategies for doing this. Of course, digital inclusion is important. uh, Providing women with better technology, with I mean, cheaper internet packages, all of that, those are very important measures as well. How to do is of course with the public and private collaboration, with uh, getting local NGOs, local communities involved as well. And yeah, because that's the way you reach to the most marginalized population as well. um, yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Once again, some very important points you have shared from your experience in your country. And so I think, you also highlighted the divide, urban and rural divide, male and female divide in accessing technology. And you highlighted one point towards the end that, cheaper packages, internet. But, one thing is that these are increasingly in the private sector, basically. So private sector will work or reduce prices only it can scale up. Scaling is a problem also, but countries like India, it's a large country, so with a large number of population, but with it a smaller country with lower income, that scalability is a problem, and then it becomes more costly. So it's a cycle, you can say, that you're already at a lower threshold level, but because of that, through a lower threshold level, the companies do not get, do not are not motivated to reduce the prices to make so that the it can reach out to larger sections of population. So there is a need for public policies as well. You have highlighted that also, that how the the governments can also come up with various measures, at least in terms of policy interventions. The other issue is also quite, attractive, I think, quite fascinating, is that the distinction between jobs and work. It is really, I mean, so work, we try to, this is almost a synonym. So to us, those who are not specialized in this subject, but really, I mean, this issue, it just struck me that, there's a huge amount of difference now that you have pointed out that jobs is something you want stability and security, but work can be any type, but without any security. And particularly your examples of Uber driver or food delivery men, these are the examples where also, I mean, creating a job and then quality of jobs, security of job, these are also very important. And then the issue of education, you have highlighted the importance of making a smooth journey from education to employment. Thank you very much for those points. So I have the last speaker, but not the least, Mr. Prajol Joshi, who is an economist at South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics, and Environment, South in Nepal.
Thank you, Dr. Fahmida. Uh, I just, being an economist, I just wanted to give some data before actually delving into the questions that has been posed to us. Uh, this technological innovations, or so-called industrial revolution 4.0, has been changing our entire economy actually. So one research that has been done for few of the major countries around the world has shown that this digital economy, so-called digital economy that has been created by industrial revolution 4.0, is going to reach US dollar $16.5 trillion, which is equivalent to 17% of the global GDP right now. In the coming decade, almost 70% of new value creation is going to be driven by this industrial revolution 4.0. One data that has been tracked is on digital trade, or digitally ordered and digitally delivered services, which shows that almost 25% of the global trade in 2020 is based on digital trade. And this has been this same data has shown that Nepal's export of digital trade has almost doubled between 2013 and 2023. In 2013, Nepal exported around 469 million USD equivalent digital services, which in 2023 it was 836 million USD. So it's promising number in terms of economic values. Uh, and I agree with what my panelists have been forwarding. So digital transformation has been a double-edged sword. So in one way, it is going to kill few of the jobs. In another way, it is going to create more opportunities as well. In the context of Nepal as well, so we have seen a good level of growth in gig, so-called gig economy. We have seen substantial growth in ride-sharing platforms like Tutul, Pathao, eDrive. One estimate was shown that these ride-sharing apps are employing almost 200,000 people, mostly unskilled people in solely in Kathmandu only right now. So that's a very good number in terms of youth employability, and most almost majority of those people would be youths actually. Then we also have a recent growth of food and parcel delivery platforms as well in Nepal, such as Foodmandu, Vos Deals, InDrive, and Pathao also taking, Pathao, InDrive, Tutul also taking these kind of markets actually. We have seen substantial growth in e-commerce platforms as well. Daraz, such kind of Daraz. We have other kinds of platforms as well. One data as shown by Daraz in 2023 during their 11/11 sale, they actually in a single day served 0.7 million customers in 24 hours time frame. That was 360 million rupees of actual sales, which was substantially higher than what they did in 2022, 1 year earlier, and few years earlier as well. We have seen substantial growth in terms of fintech companies. Fintech companies like Connect IPS. We have mobile wallet system like eSewa, Khalti, and then we have online payment platforms like Connect IPS as well. So substantial growth in terms of digital economy in the context of Nepal. But the main challenge, which my fellow panelists has already been highlighted, is digitally literate. We need digitally literate citizens within the country, and most of the most of the South Asian region countries, including Nepal, don't have sufficient supply of that, and that is the biggest limitation. One data that has been presented by International Telecommunication Union, ITU, World Telecommunication ICT Indicators, the database shows that only 43% of the total population of South Asia are using internet. This was data of 2 years ago, so 2021, against almost 73% in China and 62% in the entire world. So that's we are lagging almost 20% behind. So in this context, there is an urgent need to upskill and reskill these large proportions of people. We need to make more and more digital literate people. So coming back to my points, so I would be talking about how can we better integrate the role of digital skilling into our education system, into the Nepalese education system. I'm going to talk few of the examples of how some of the initiatives has been taken in the context of Nepal. So uh, first, when we talk about educational reforms, then we have to talk about curriculum reform. So we need to reform the curriculum that has been offered in the context of Nepal. In the context of Nepal, at the undergrad level and graduate level, most of the educational institutions nowadays have been offering degree courses, undergraduate or graduate degree courses related to ICT, any kind of ICT, maybe IoTs or maybe AI as well, or digital marketing as well. But where we are missing these kind of reforms in primary and secondary level education actually. There are substantial number of undergraduate and graduate schools in Nepal who are foreign affiliated, so there is some kind of freedom in curriculum designing in the context of Nepal. So as per the demand, these educational institutions of Nepal quickly adopted to the demand of the people. But the primary level and the secondary level educational institutions, which are usually governed by the Nepal government, so they are not being able to adopt accordingly to the need. In this context, another point could be we need a good partnerships of educational institutions with the industry as well. So there are certain initiatives being seen in the context of Nepal. The educational institutions at undergraduate as well as that are offering undergraduate and graduate level education, they are partnering with industries who are providing future employment to their students. So in terms of internship, in terms of mentoring programs, in terms of guest lectures, visits, presentations, or any other kinds of presentations by the industry people about where the market is heading, those kind of things. There are certain independent companies also are being established in the context of Nepal, who are trying to bridge the gap between industry and educational institutions. I just wanted to name a few, name one institution that is working in the context of Nepal, that is Skill Lab, which is trying to bridge the gap between educational institutions and industries. So they are trying to, either if the students are not getting the right skills, then they are providing maybe short-term courses to skill those employees, skill those students, or they are also trying to uh, aware educational institutions that what is the industry demand, by connecting these educational institutions with the industry people as well. In the recent decade, actually, what Mr. Aris actually mentioned, I also agree. COVID was a blessing in disguise for this industry revolution 4.0 actually. So we have seen substantial growth in the use of online learning platforms in the context of Nepal. More and more students, more and more young people who are just employed, who they want to reskill to adopt to the growing need of the market. So they are taking short-term courses that are being offered by Coursera or edX, maybe paid, maybe free ones as well. And there are certain institutions there, as well as educational institutions, also offering these kind of benefits to their students as well. Uh, a final point before I end my opening remarks. Yes, the digital divide is huge and it's growing actually. What Pranav actually said is true. The rural-urban divide is high and the gender divide is also high. So whenever we want to adopt to this changing market scenario, we have to focus on the marginalized groups. We have to remember that we need to create equitable opportunities through technological innovation. So digital divide is there, and we need to give an extra priority to these kind of marginalized groups. So to conclude, I just wanted to put one sentence. So by prioritizing the development of digital skills, or we need to skill more and more youths digitally within the educational system, South and Southeast Asian countries can empower their youth to thrive in an increasingly competitive job market. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prajwal Joshi, for your valuable points. Actually, you have reinforced some of the issues which have been discussed by the previous speakers, and you have brought out some examples also for Nepal, where the industry and the educational institutions are working together to bridge the gaps. Of the skills which are required for the job market, which is it's a very good initiative. In fact, in our country, I can talk about Bangladesh also. I mean, there are some initiatives, but you see this, as many speakers have mentioned, that the growth in the IT or technology sector is very fast. The change is very fast, so you have to adapt to that change scenario very fast. And your last point is particularly important, because we have mentioned earlier that technology can also be a tool, or I mean, not in the positive sense, but in the negative sense, that it can also augment inequality and the rural-urban divide, male-female divide, but also the issue of bringing the marginalized people, the less privileged people, giving them the opportunity to benefit from this. And there, I think you need higher investment, and both from the private and public sector. So I think we had a very good discussions from our panelists. So, and they have provided a lot of food for thought, and I'm sure that you have also some questions or comments on this issue, because this is an issue where I think most of us have interest, because we cannot avoid this. This is a reality we are facing today and tomorrow. So the floor is open now. So please share your comments, or if you have any questions to any panelists particularly, or all panelists.
Good afternoon. This is Beam Dostresta. Yes, of course, all our panelists have spoken.
Can you just identify yourself? So, yeah.
I am Beam Dostresta. I used to work in Tribhuvan University. Almost all of our panelists say that, of course, technology can make workplace better, but as well as most of them said, it's a double sword. Yeah, actually, when introducing new technology in any places, there will be some of the replacements. In that case, as many of you said, the main problem whether we can make one regional body which will make these, which will take care of these problems. Like for example, this digital divide is making very growing more and more, and the finishing school, of course, Mr. Prozul said one institution started, but it's very huge problem because many of the small institutions cannot provide them pre-job training. So finishing school is very important, and of course, more and more IT education should be inculcated in school education as well, so that those all digital services, fruits of those services can be nurtured in the rural areas too. That will make very actually those people will also be served of those whatever digital facility is available in the city area only. During old days, those facilities which is available in city areas may not be able to transfer to the rural areas, but now digitally it's possible. Only the thing is, of course, digital public infrastructure is required. If government could provide that, even in those remote villages also, they can get the fruit of those digital benefits. Thank you.
Thank you for those points. Yes, please. Dr. Iqbal.
Thank you. I would like to highlight a social aspect of this IT related employment. As Mr. Gupta has already touched upon, the labor standards and working conditions of IT related jobs. But one aspect is that a great majority, a proportion of the youth in South Asia or BC is working with international employers. So usually what they do, they work all the night because of the time difference. So there are two major problems. One is, of course, I mean, other than the working conditions and the payment, but major thing is their social isolation, and which also leads to their mental health and societal problems. So I'm not aware that if any research is done in South Asia and in this or in Southeast Asia, but I think this is an area of future research that needs to be done. Yeah.
Thank you for pointing out this very important point, actually. So, social isolation and mental health. So, how these are interconnected. So, any other comments? Yes, please. Yeah.
My name is Sri Dibrahamaji. I'm an educator as well as a policy researcher, and I have a lot of hats to wear. My thing is, I'd opened a store in Facebook in 2013. So, we were selling stuff in Facebook. That is very rampant here in Nepal. There are a lot of people, especially young people, who open stores, right? The government from this year, I think this year, gave up funds for startups. And as I said, I'm an educator, so I teach e-business. So that is, I'm teaching that for bachelor's 8th semester. So that's particularly a topic for students to take up and study. So after all this, and within my experience, what I've learned is, you know the things are getting better, but technology itself is moving, but it's not moving to the pace of what it should be. So you can imagine 2013 we were using Facebook and selling stuff, right now there are a lot of apps that are running, and like opening, uh, giving employment. A lot of businesses generation is happening, but there is a certain lack of trust, or I don't know, I'm not able to exactly point it out, but it is not going as per what it is needed here. So how do you see this as a challenge? Because the youth, if they were not interested, they would not be using social media as a means of business. And let me tell you, not just Facebook, they're using Viber, they're using WhatsApp, they're using Instagram, they're using Pinterest. So these show that youth are taking up, whether they have skills or not. It's evident, you could see it. But there is certain thing that is lacking. The government has already stepped up, recognizing and giving loans to startup. So what is that are we lacking here in Nepal, that is completely holding us back? Because I see it from my angle that when I started, it's 10 years back, and still we are still discussing about the digital literacy. We are still talking about the public infrastructure thing. uh, More or less the growth has been small, but it has not been able to materialize. Maybe it's something like a collaborative experience sharing, or something or whether it's a digital trust, but it is certainly lacking. So I think there should be a regional consultation or a research about this, because I've seen it happen in India as well. There are a lot of people using social media, doing a lot of research, selling stuffs, but it's just something that is lacking, that is holding up everything. Even if you look at the government, they're like putting the resources in. So I would like to raise this question. If anybody has any idea, please.
I have a question to you. So, by lack of digital trust, I mean, what do you mean? Is it like lot of misinformation and disinformation are floating around the social media, and one doesn't really know what is true and what is false, what is, so that is how to extract, and people are misguided by those. This is a real problem and huge. Do you mean that, or any other?
I mean to say, when I talk about digital trust, it is about the whole aspect of seeing things, right? The TikTok. If you look at the whole history of TikTok banning here in Nepal, TikTok was booming. I mean to say, the people were going crazy in Nepal. They were earning, they were living, they were doing everything that was possible to do with TikTok. Young people were doing it, but suddenly the government banned it, right? So that attitude, that specific confrontation, kind of like has a certain notion of understanding what the whole value system is all about, or how are we going about this idea that a lot of youth are seeing future in e-business or e-technology or whatever e-things, but one thing, and it's shut down. It's happening all over Asia, South Asia. It's completely, it's very common. So I think we have to understand this topic more better, so that it can be facilitated in a more common ways, of making it more efficient and effective. Thank you.
Dr. Sivasava.
This is just to take forward your very specific comments on the digital trust. This AI development worldwide, we have been tracking from the UN system. There was a task force of Secretary General on the AI. It has this development taking place without having any international standards. So AI could be used, abused, misused. You can say whatever it is. I'm just trying to cite. We have one typhoon committee, which is the Southeast Asian, all the AI giants country are the member of it. If you run a AI model to cyclone intensity and track predictions, it works very well in certain country context because they have data, they have observational systems, and with all their data and observational system, their AI model works quite well. Same AI, if you take to some other country, I'm just citing example, where there are a lot of data gaps, and run this model, the cyclone will be hitting somewhere, the prediction will show 100 kilometers away. So it's a complete fall. So AI works under a certain data intensive, knowledge intensive context. It may not work everywhere. So we have to be very mindful of this fact. There are no international standards. So it's bound to be abused. And many of these digital platforms, which are AI based, the financial fraud is it's bound to happen. There are many reports which your bank accounts, if it is accessed by some AI based algorithms, you will never know the fate of it. So let us take this. There are a lot of things to do in coming days before AI becomes a mature, a standardized technology and integrated in all sectors of development. Thank you.
Thank you for those points. Very important. In fact, the landscape of AI is huge. We can go in any direction. But since he has pointed out the issue of trust, and also he mentioned about one thing, that government intervention. But I think, to my mind, some amount of intervention is required at this point in time. But anyway, we are focusing on taking the positive aspect of it to create employment for the youth. So that is our focus. But this is also a very important point. So this fraud and misuse and abuse of AI can take us to anywhere. So I think, any other comments? If not, then I'll come back to my panelists. So I'll start from the right. If you want to address any issue from there, or something you left out at your first intervention. So just 2 minutes.
Sure. Thank you. I think I'll talk about what you mentioned about trust with AI, with social media. I think generally, I mean, think about the Australia ban recently. Australia recently banned 16 years of children age 16 years. There are reasons behind that, right? Like, it's not only employment generation, and this, of course, that's an important thing as well. But again, it's a double-edged sword. There are the bads as well. And I think what Dr. Khatun said is right. You need more regulatory systems in place. Australia completely banning it is maybe not the solution that will work in South Asia, but some amount of regulation, some kind of some kind of regulation definitely is required, so that the better aspects of social media can be used and can be put to use. Yep, that's it.
In Nepal and in a lot of developing countries that I've worked, one of the things I've noticed, whenever there is a new technology comes in, you know, the government and the regulatory authorities don't understand that technology. The first interaction is just ban it, you know, and that is not a good strategy. We are having a very similar debate about developing Nepal's AI strategy right now. It's ongoing process, and I have told them repeatedly, you know, there is a group that strongly believes that we need to ban this. And there is one group, he says, the government should not regulate it. It should be self-regulation. But then I try to tell them that, you know, there are advanced countries who are looking into developing risk management and guardrails. There are certain treaties that Nepal needs to sign. Nepal has signed the UNICEF treaty, but we are nowhere in the process of what is called RAM, Readiness Assessment Matrix. And you can't be doing all these things. And it has become very confusing because people are not really understanding the issues and they're jumping into that by saying that let's not regulate it. We don't need any government regulations. So that kind of thinking eventually, in the long run, will backfire. And I think that's something that we all have to learn through mistakes. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, it's with the older generation, something we are not used to accept anything new. And we also have seen that during COVID, people are, even in the most developed countries, people were against taking vaccines. So those types of mindsets are also there. So more awareness and education among the policymakers are also important, and among the broader sections of people. So yes, Mr. Prajol, yes, you have any comments?
Thank you, Dr. Famida. I just wanted to, because what Veem sir had mentioned about the regional body, or we need some kind of institutions, that finishing institutions. Actually, I found one framework that was adopted by UNESCO. So they have, for skills development in a technology driven economy. So they have mentioned about three different kinds of skills that we need. So foundational skills that should be acquired through the basic education, and that's where the school level, we need school IT education in schools as well. So I came from a background in my school when we had computer class, maybe at a higher secondary level, and that computer classes was actually just looking at the computer, not actually using the computer. So I was at that point of time. So but the technology had changed a lot right now. Then we need a transversal skills, so that should be acquired through education and life experience. And then we need specialized skills, and that should be acquired through TVETs firms. So we need those kind of finishing institutions, actually. Uh, so regarding the Facebook store, actually, entrepreneurship, the main drawback for flourishing any entrepreneurship firms is the cost of establishing and cost of closing down the business if that entrepreneurship fails. And actually, this digitalization has brought down the cost of establishing and cost of closing down the business very low. So that's where that has helped these entrepreneurs a lot. And with this, I just wanted to close with one point that was raised yesterday during technology and innovation session. So we had one panel who mentioned that for countries like Nepal, who have a significant barrier in infrastructure, we don't have good roads. So for other kinds of sectors to grow, we need those physical infrastructure. For technology based growth, service based growth, we don't need those kind of physical infrastructure. We just need one data center, and we everything comes from the cloud right now. So we can, for us, for countries like Nepal, developing countries like Nepal, we have to go on look for service based growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joshi. Your experience with schools, you know, looking at the computer reminds me also something similar. I don't know, Mr. Shoidul Haq is here. Please excuse me for saying this. Not pointed to your ministry, but 10 years back, 10 years back, when we used to visit some of the ministries, we would see that computers are there in high officials' room, but those will be covered with towels. And so there will be there were technology. So that's how. But this is a different scenario now. It has improved. That is the positive side. But so this is, I think these are similar stories we can share. And also learning, exchanging yeah, ideas. Anyway, so the last speaker, again, the Mr. Sityadi. So if you have any comments, the last few comments.
Sure. I would like to chip into the discussion to the four questions. On the first one, agree that small institutions, I think, can provide sort of like skill uh, uh, trainings because sometimes expensive. In the case of Indonesia, during the COVID pandemic, the government has a program called pre-employment card. It's an upskilling, even though during the pandemic, mainly used as an unemployment insurance. But again, this upskilling training subsidy still has a limitation in terms of the costs. While for the skill gaps in the fintech, in particular like cybersecurity or data analytics, couldn't be covered by this pre-employment card. And then second question on the mental health, it's interesting subject in Indonesia as well. There are more and more startups in mental health that got investment from the venture capital. So I think in a way that's a proxy of that there's a need or there's a demand from the mental health. And in the case of fintech companies, I think when during the pandemic, almost all, if not all, uh, fintech company use a work from home arrangement, and now I think they start reshifting into hybrid or work from office because they believe that the human interaction is still needed and to make the work more efficient and also more effective. And then on the AI for environment in Indonesia, there's also a new trend on the agri-tech. So there are more and more agriculture or fisheries using AI for instance, automatic fertilizers or automatic feeding for fish and also shrimp that also gain attractions and gain a lot of investment, especially in tackling the food security issues in Indonesia. And the new government actually had a lot of program improving the nutritions for the young kids in Indonesia, because Indonesia is one of, I think, top five or with kid with stuntings around the globe. And last point on the social media, in Indonesia, there's also a demand of clear distinctions between social media and also other platform like e-commerce or fintech, because there has been issue. I agree with Dr. Fahmida that it's needed that to especially to improve the consumer protections, because there are a lot of influencers in the social media that has no transparency whether they promote the product based on their knowledge or simply because they're getting paid. So the Indonesia Financial Service Authority has also enacted consumer protection regulations, including some points on the use of the financial influencers as well, to avoid such investment scams or fake stories that lead to consumer getting into negative investment or other negative financial products or illegal even. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Dr. Ganga Tilaka Ratna. I forgot. I'm so sorry. Actually, she told me not to call her, so I was following. Yes, call her name. So I took it literally, but I wouldn't spare you from making your last remarks.
Okay, so I mean, it's actually I agree with my fellow panelists on various issues discussed. So, despite the importance of technology in creating employment for youth and enhancing the youth employability, I think one of the concerns, actually, out of the concerns that were discussed, that is more important for me in the context of Sri Lanka is the growing informalization within the formal sector when it comes to the IT sector, ICT sector. Now, in the case of Sri Lanka, our informal employment is actually about 62%, which is probably relatively lower compared to the other countries in South Asia. But with the sort of growing employment opportunities within the ICT sector now, especially following the COVID 19 and going into sort of the digital platforms and young people moving into sort of more digital sort of gig economy and all that. So I mean, I'm actually thinking loud whether the sort of the employment landscape, would be somewhat different in the future, because even though they are not captured within the actual informal sector, but this will be a growing portion within the formal sector, this informal employment. So there is a need to sort of have some policies, social protection policies, etc., to sort of to look after this segment of the population which is not informal, but then which are not low income, but then which are also not formal sector employees.
Thank Thank you very much for echoing these points which have been highlighted. Many speakers actually, so you need some policies on that to formalize. So we are talking about formalization of the jobs. Basically, we also have lot of, I mean, over 80% jobs are in the informal sector, which is, there's no job security and there is low income. So this is another challenge, and how technology can address that, that is another issue, because technology is not a panacea to all the problems we have discussed. I will end now, but I would uh, request someone who hasn't spoken so far. My colleague Obro will offer the vote of thanks. But before that, I would like to request Miss Julia Sato, who is sitting here since morning. Julia Sato Bajracharya, who is a senior analyst at Globe site in Nepal. I would request you to, share your points on any of the issues which have been discussed since morning. So everyone has spoken. So I think, why should I leave you behind?
No, thank you for the opportunity to speak. But I think overall, just reflecting on the sessions today, it's really been a very productive discussion. We've started with climate change. We've talked about a lot about climate finance, what that means for developing countries and in the global south to have access to that. We slightly also touched on loss and damage, and um, discussions around what that would mean in parallel to making good governance in our own countries while trying to access funds for things that are really urgent. So I think for me in particular, the first session, obviously, um, that's also a sector that I've particularly been engaged in. So it was really fruitful in that sense. And following that, health, obviously a very, very important area for us in Nepal, but also in the region. And then following this last session, which kind of wrapped up a lot of the things, but also delved very much deep into the IT sector, what AI and what the future of that looks like. So overall, yeah, just very good group of experts and very fruitful discussion overall. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You kind of wrapped up. So yeah, I would not wrap up. I'll not say any. Try to summarize also, but I would now request my colleague Obru Bhattacharya, who is the Joint Director, Dialogue and Outreach, Center for Policy Dialogue, to make vote of thanks. He and his team actually helped us to organize this meeting, which I think went very well, very smoothly. Thank you, Obro, and your team. And over to you.
Thank you, madam, and thank you, everybody. As you all know, there are lots of people working behind for a successful event, and we have also lots of people, so I need to write it down. But I'll be very brief. Ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests and partners, CPD extended its sincere appreciation to those from Nepal and abroad who participated in this regional consultation on the innovation, ideas, and knowledge sharing, organized by CPD in partnership with Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation. Our heartfelt gratitude to goes to Mr. Diksha Singh, who is not here, but the program coordinator of Swati, for her outstanding contribution of the regional session with CPD. At the parallel session, just held at this hotel, the size 15, Technology and Innovation for the Equitable Green Transformation, which was partnered by CPD. And he also helped us to organize this particular session today. And we also wanted to express our deepest gratitude to thanks Dr. Paresh Kharel, Executive Director of SWATI, for his invaluable overall support to organize this event. And also our sincere thanks go to our partners and supporter, Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation, whose contribution have been crucial in making this event possible. And also a special thanks to our own chairman, Professor Rehman Soban, whose impression and guidance has been invaluable to us always. And without his vision and leadership, you would not be able to where we are now today. And also we want to thank our Board of Trustee member and our distinguished fellow Professor Ronak Jan, who is also staying at that hotel right now, but they are not here for this session. Additionally, we would like to acknowledge and thanks to our senior colleagues who participated at the size 15 but not here today. Dr. Deopriya Bhattacharya and Professor Mustafizur Rahman, our distinguished fellow, and also our CPD research director, who also participated in the last size 15, and who is not here, but we want to thank them for their support and guidance always. And we also like to take this opportunity to thank our admin and finance director, Mr. Shafiqul Islam, and Mr. Mamunur Rashid, who actually arranged your travel from your home country to Nepal, and hope he will able to send you back to your home country. Yeah. And I also like to extend our gratitude to our research team who are here, Mr. Muntasir Kamal, Mr. Yusuf Sadat, and Fakhruddin Al-Kobir for their dedicated effort. And also special thanks to Mr. Pritilota Khandokar Haq. I hope you all receive our letter, and for his excellent management of the invitation and excellent doing the things very successfully. Additionally, I want to thank my own team, and their effort is planning and executing this session, with special thanks to Mr. Sarwar, who is our IT guy, and Mr. Khalid is back from here. Mr. Khalid is here, my team member, and I want to thank them for their dedicated contribution for organizing these sessions. And in this size 15, we published a compendium. Maybe some of you see these books. And my thanks to Miss Emma Akhtar, our program, she is preparing the summit, and we published this summit compendium to the size 15. So I'm thank Miss Emma Akhtar and his team, Mr. Imran Khan and Shafiqul Hassan, for his assistance for pre-printing this process. And furthermore, we also extend our gratitude to the management and the staff of the Hotel Hyatt Regency for their hospitality and their support during the whole day. And finally, I and my team and also CPD extend our sincere thanks to our Executive Director, CPD, Dr. Fahmida Khatun, for her invaluable guidance and exceptional leadership, which have been almost constant source of our inspiration and direction of all our endeavor. And thank you all of you who participated here for this whole day, and hopefully your enriched discussion, which is be very fruitful for the whole day. And I wish you all best of luck, and who are going back your home, wishing you a safe journey. And thank you again to all.
Thank Thank you very much, Abro, and thank you once again to all the panelists. Everyone was a panelist here. So thank you very much for your thought-provoking ideas, recommendations, suggestions. These are invaluable actually, because this was not a big conference, but we planned it that way so that we can take maximum out of you. All of you are experts in your own field, and we have benefited tremendously from the discussions we had. So I would echo with Obro that you all, those who are traveling out of Nepal to your home country, have a safe journey back, and those who are staying here, you have a safe stay and successful stay as well, and enjoy the evening. I would like to request you to join us for refreshment. Thank you.